And welcome to another episode of Being Bookish. And this week I have got a special one for you. I am speaking with F.T. Lukens, the author of brand new book, Otherworldly, but also So This Is Ever After and Deeper Waters, among many others. Thank you so much for joining me today, despite the slight time difference issues.
Well, thank you for having me. Sorry about that little mix-up about time changes and
It
time
always
zones
happens at
earlier.
this time of year. We're here to talk about your brand new book, Otherworldly, which comes out on the 1st of April in the US and
Second.
it's the 2nd, so the same day as it comes out in the UK. And I read it a couple of weeks ago when I received it and loved it. I'm not a big YA fan because I'm a little bit outside of that age group. Okay, I'm old enough to have grandchildren reading that age group, but I really enjoyed it. I loved the blend of the fantastical and the realist. So it was kind of magical realism in many ways. And the cover is absolutely stunning. It really is. Did you have any input in the cover of the book?
So I'm very lucky to have worked with Sam Schechter, who is the artist, and Rebecca Syracuse, who is the designer, on In Deeper Waters, So This Is Ever After, Spellbound, and now Otherworldly. And Sam really just kind of takes what I've written, and then I give like a little synopsis of, this character wears a hat and this character does this kind of thing, and send it to them, and then they produce the most amazing stuff, the most amazing art.
It really
And
is. It glows.
and I get to, see it and be like, this is amazing. Can we just change this one little thing? And that's it. I don't ever have to say, oh no, this is bad. It's always just beautiful, and it's always done really well. And one thing that I got for So This Is Ever After and for Otherworldly is the additional characters on the back cover.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so we have our two mains on the front, and then on the back we have the four, because there's character of the rest of them.
Of
And
course.
the little change I asked was to make sure this character got included on the.
He plays a very important part in the book.
Yes, towards the end, he's very in. Well, beginning too, a little bit. He's pretty important. So, but there, yes, I am, again. I'm just so lucky. I just anytime anyone asks me that, I just like, I'm so enthused and just heap praise upon those two people, because I
They
know
are,
a lot
I
of my
mean,
books are cover buys,
that's the
and I'm
thing. I
fine
mean,
with that.
these covers are very ethereal in their appearance. There's almost, even though it's a drawing, and it has this glow to it. That's the first thing I noticed, was it had a glow, almost as though you were getting the inner glow of the two characters on the front cover, and you could really tell quite a lot about them from it.
Yeah, I think of the four that Sam has done, and I don't want to pick favorites, but the
Go
action
ahead.
and the sense of them falling, the snow, Ellery's hat, and being all bundled up versus Knox, in a t-shirt. I mean, like, there's so much here that kind of tells you what the book is happening and who's the supernatural character and what's going on. I mean, like, it's really perfect.
It is very stunning cover. So we've talked about, obviously we've mentioned Knox and Ellery. So do you want to tell people about the book? No spoilers. That is my one caveat in every episode. We don't spoil anything because we do want people, I want people to read the books.
Well, Otherworldly is I call it my weird paranormal romance book. And it's about Ellery, who is a skeptic and a non-believer in anything supernatural or paranormal. And they meet Knox, who happens to be a supernatural being. And they make a bargain, they make a deal, to where Knox can stay in the human realm, while helping Ellery try to figure out why there's this supernatural winter.
It's been a very, very long winter, which most people in the UK will be sympathizing with right at this moment in time. We've had winter since last spring. We weren't among the places that got an extraordinarily warm summer. We had a couple of days of double digits. It was raining the rest of the year. So we sympathize quite a lot, which is awful. It's so bad to say, but our weather is, we had one day of spring so far. We had a blue sky on Saturday. It's been raining ever since. So the experience that they're going through is very familiar to us. But also, it lasted a very long time as well. This winter has been lasting for the last 5 years, which is obviously tied to another element of Knox's experience, isn't it?
Yes, so the winter lasts 5 years, which is Ellery is 17, so it's been their entire like teenage experience has been stuck in this winter, and they're very bitter about that,
I get
and
that.
yeah, and how it's affected their family because they come from a rural community and a farming community, and of course, if there's winter for 5 years, that makes it really difficult on those communities. And so Ellery has had to grow up really quickly and has had to leave home and get a job to send money home, and is really, um, you know, keeps saying that there's got to be some scientific reason for this. And they feel at this point in the story pretty hopeless that this winter is going to end, and pretty hopeless that anyone is still even thinking about this town in this region that is stuck. And they feel forgotten. Um, and so yeah, when Knox shows up and is like, well, I am a supernatural being and this is, what I do, and they're like, yeah, whatever.
I loved I loved their cynicism though. There was something so relatable about it.
That was one of the balances with Ellery's character that was a little difficult, was making a character a cynic and kind of abrasive, and not really likable in the beginning, and making sure though that they were still relatable and that people would still want to root for them.
That I think that was it, was because there was such a, you know what, no, this isn't real, which so many people can sympathize with, because you think about the climate change deniers, for example, and other things. There must be something greater than this. There must be something out there. So many people are far more cynical now than they ever used to be, because science has made them question things. And I think that is what made Ellery's character so easy to understand.
Yeah, I enjoy Ellery's character a lot, and a lot of the themes. Yeah, I wouldn't say that Ellery is me or anything like that. I've gotten that question. I'm like, no, not really. But there's a lot of like personal, themes in here about, moving away from your home and making decisions that are right for yourself, and kind of coming into your own, and maybe that realization as you're growing older that the people you've relied on all your life and the people that you thought had all the answers don't have all the answers. And so yeah, so I feel like Ellery's character arc will be relatable to a lot of folks.
Well, absolutely. I think that that is one of the it's a part, it's a growing up arc more than anything. It's kind of like the Bildungsroman element. It is, she is, set they are discovering their freedoms and the way that they have relating with their cousins and their cousins partners and the people they've got to work with. The relationship with their boss was abrasive, but at the same time quite funny and very familiar. I think a lot of people can say, yeah, I'd like to say that to my boss too.
Well, Ellery is a dishwasher in a diner. And when I was thinking about what kind of like job would a teenager get and what kind of job, would be a not fun job, I just, drew from personal experience for when I worked in food service as a teen and I did dishwashing for two different jobs. One was at an ice cream shop and had to like at the end of the day, like clean out all the fudge and caramel and stuff
Oh no.
from
That
the
I don't
tin.
even like doing that when I'm baking. That's the worst job.
It was the worst. And then I worked at a summer camp for a couple of summers, and being in the kitchen after the kids have eaten, and like the trays coming back and having to, rinse everything off and then shove it through the Hobart machine to get it all clean. And how just even after a little while, like your skin gets all red and it's humid, and it's not a pleasant job. So I mean, but it's what Ellery could get.
Yeah. I think everybody's had an unpleasant job in their past. I worked in a pub kitchen doing the washing up, and we didn't have a Hobart machine. I worked in not a supermarket, in a department store cafe kitchen, and we had a Hobart machine, which was very, very useful, but it was limited. Certain people couldn't use it, and I was one of them. And there were certain things that we couldn't put through the machine, so I had
Right.
to whip them up. The
There's
big
definitely
pan.
things that cannot go through.
Yes, absolutely. The bigger pans that were cooking things like the ragu and everything else, they couldn't go through the machine. And then I worked in a fish and chip shop, and that was probably the smelliest job I've ever had, because you come home and it's as though the smell of the grease and the chips and the fish has literally embedded itself in your skin. So those are the jobs I remember having that were vastly unpleasant.
I would take my little ice cream job over a fish and chips any day.
Especially Friday night shifts, because Friday night, even without the tradition, were the busiest nights in a fish and chip shop. And all you're doing is wrapping, and you end up with red raw fingers, paper cuts,
Yeah.
the lot. I sympathize with Ellery and the the dishwashing. In fact, as I was reading it, it was like, yeah, this feels like this feels like Friday nights at the Chippy. But they kept their motivation and their, not optimism, because there was that element of I've got to do this, but at the same time there was also the I can get through this.
Yes. Ellery's a pretty stubborn person. And which is why when Knox does show up and proves that he's, a supernatural being, Ellery's still like, I don't know.
What's it going to take to prove it to you? Even
And
as they were making that bargain, it was, you could
right.
almost
And
work it out.
Ellery is so kind of steadfast in their skepticism that even when they met the supernatural, like the shades in the alley,
Yeah.
like later they were justifying it to themselves, like they were real, they were thieves, or they were real people instead of like these creatures. They just kind of justified it to themselves, like, oh, it was dark, I couldn't see them, that's why, that kind of stuff. And it was like,
Even the whole thing with the iron,
yes.
and oh no, that was, anybody's going to be like that if you whack them with an iron pipe.
Right.
Well, to be fair, they're not that wrong.
No. And it had to be a freak lightning strike. That's what that flash was.
Exactly. I absolutely loved those elements, and the shades were terrifying. The way that they were described in my head, it set off these triggers of the characters in Hush, or the Dementors, in many ways. That those two types
Oh,
of
yeah.
character crossed.
They're more the way I kind of, have explained them in the past is they're like the Nazgul from the Lord of the Rings, but they're also kind of like the witches from Macbeth and the Fates, in the Disney
Yeah.
Hercules, kind of thing. That kind of image. But they're shadowed, they're cloaked until they meet the Siren's magic. And she exposes them for what they are, and that's when they're really terrifying.
I think they're terrifying enough. I mean, it is taking a lot of things that, in a way, we're afraid of in real life. The darkness in the shadow, the shadows in the darkness. The people that come out and are that sinister and have that evil intent already in the real world, and turning it into something that is fantasy, which is scary in its which is scary.
There's a lot of horror elements and horror tropes in the book, which is weird for it being a romance. But um, I have a good friend, D.L. Wainwright, who writes folklore horror books. And I was talking with them throughout, the kind of the process and like, oh, what kind of creature do you think I could make here? Or what, would be scary at this point kind of thing. And I used a lot of, if you notice in a lot of the big scenes, that they're in a liminal space, like a darkened alley, abandoned mall,
Yeah.
cornfield, those kinds of places that are inherently creepy and eerie. And that was a setup. That was intentional. That a lot of those big scenes happen in places that already have a creepy feel, and that kind of gives that the whole book, the whole narrative kind of has an underlying kind of eerie feel.
Yeah, they're the sort of places that when you watch a film, you almost yell at the screen, "Don't go in there. Why are you
Right.
going in there?"
Don't follow the handsome dude from the party.
Exactly. Because they might turn out to be something you really don't want to meet.
Exactly.
I mean, there was such a charm to a lot of the characters. Knox, particularly, he is going to be I reckon, a book crush of quite a few people, because there is something about him that is innocent yet aware, and
Yeah.
that is attractive. It
Well,
I hate saying it, but it is.
he's an immortal being, and one of the things I wanted to make sure of in the Ellery and Knox relationship is that it wasn't imbalanced and there wasn't a power imbalance in it. And to do that, I had to create, Knox, even though he's supernatural, a way for him to kind of be on the same footing as Ellery. And that's where the idea of his memory being erased after every life.
Which is
And so
sad.
when he comes back this time, and if you noticed when he first stumbles out of the tree, he is wearing clothes from the 90s. So the last
Hey,
time he
that's
was
half
there in
my
the
wardrobe.
so he in this life has been pretty much sheltered and stayed at home because his boss in this life is a workaholic, and so he just kind of gleans all of his human knowledge from TV shows, specifically teen supernatural TV shows
It had a
like
feel,
Buffy.
the show they were yeah, the show they were talking about had that Buffy Supernatural Vampire Diaries feel to it.
Yes, the witches, wyverns, and werewolves show. Yes,
Yeah, it had that
definitely.
feel.
Definitely like a Riverdale Teen Wolf Vampire Diaries kind of mashup show, and they were all
Yeah.
obsessed with it.
Don't tell me what happened. I can't find out. I need to watch it. Well, there were so many very natural exchanges about that kind of thing, because TV shows are obviously, they are the locker room, the water cooler conversation. And if you're not part of it, which with a lot of the newer shows, I'm not so much, but with the older shows, I could quite happily sort of, I have my own strengths. And that is the kind of conversations quite often they were having, so far out of the, oh, he's a supernatural being. They were very, I'm just going to watch my program.
Yeah, and a lot of the ideas of what he wanted to experience in the human world came from those kind of TV shows. And so he's like, everyone I've watched has had some kind of sporting event. Can we go to a sporting event? And they were like, well, all we got's hockey because it's winter, and it has been winter. So, and then things like wanting to see like an art museum or a Cornhenge or those kinds of things,
And have a
experience the
party.
city. um so yeah, he's gleaned all of that his information from those kinds of shows, and so that's why he's got this naive idea about what it is to be human. And then he meets Ellery and kind of realizes that it's not all fun and games being human.
Ellery is the realism that he needed.
Right.
Which
And
so, as you said, it's that balance that they bring to each other.
right. So Ellery is the concrete thinker, the grounded of the two, and kind of brings Nox back to earth thing. But Nox is Ellery's, optimism, honestly. And is what makes Ellery's life lighter. So yeah, they really balance each other out.
Which is what you need, really. No matter how old you are, you need someone to be that counterbalance to the depressive or over optimistic. You need the realism to kind of go, yeah, that's a fantastic idea, but had you considered that bit?
And
Which
and then
sometimes I felt Ellery did, with good
with
reason.
the two background characters, Charlie and Zeta, are like right in the middle. So you have like Ellery on one end, Knox on the other, and then like right in the middle, the two really most kind of pragmatic and grounded, but also empathetic characters are Zeta and Charlie. And
Yeah,
the book wouldn't have worked without them. They needed to be there to support both Ellery and Knox through their character arcs.
absolutely. Ellery needed the support because the phone calls from their mother and the demands for more money. It was like, uh, yeah, this isn't a good position to be in, and you could understand why they were so resistant to taking the phone calls and afterwards hit that slump when it came to mood, which was so realistic. That was the thing that I loved about it, was there was this fantasy element, the supernatural with Knox and everything that was going on, and then you had the thump down to earth with Ellery's situation with their home life, with the homestead and the money and education, and the constant, we need to find an answer to why we've got this permanent winter. That, as you said, was grounded in scientific. There has to be a scientific reason for this. Whereas everybody else is going, well, have you considered what about all those things that we leave for the goddess? Which was,
Yeah.
it was that light and darkness together, which really worked.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of the world building with this kind of started with knowing that there was going to be the one goddess, which is Nox's queen, and knowing that there was going to be, the Ellery and Nox dynamic, and then knowing that Nox is this kind of supernatural being. Where does he fit within this world? And then finding his spot, and then finding the shades' spot, and then the goddesses, and then from there kind of building out, because there's going to be different regions that worship different um you know gods and goddesses, and what about their children versus their creations, and all this kind of stuff. So the world building really started with the two characters and wanting that dynamic, and then kind of building out from that.
Where did the inspiration for the little seedling that sprouted the entire idea come from?
um Well, there's a lot of, well, honestly, it started with me just wanting to write those two, the skeptic and the supernatural. That's what I wanted to write. I was like, I want to do something like this. And from there, I was like, well, a bargain, like a crossroads bargain would be fun. So I did a lot of research into Faust, and reread Christopher Marlowe's Faust, Dr. Faustus, and looked into a lot of crossroads myths. And then from there, did a lot of research on different folklore. Surprisingly, did a lot of research on cornfields. Uh,
That's different.
yes. And then kind of drawing different elements from, like, for the chthonic goddess. Someone actually asked me, who she is based on, and she's honestly kind of a little bit of Persephone, a little bit of Hecate, a little bit of different goddesses that are kind of seasonal goddesses, but also connected to the earth.
Yeah.
And then from there going, okay, well, I have a goddess that encompasses these things. I need a goddess that does this and a god that does this, kind of thing, and building from there. So um, there's a lot of folklore from different places, thanks to D.L. Wainwright and all their help. And then a lot of kind of Faustian stuff, a lot of classical mythology merged with other things. So yeah, it was a fun fact was that originally when I started writing it, I was going to write it as another like higher fantasy book.
Oh
But
wow.
I wrote the first couple chapters and I was like, this doesn't work in this world. I need to make it something different. And that's when I made it into like this contemporary fantasy world. And and I had this kind of idea of with the two characters of the supernatural being needing to be saved by the human and then coming to thank them at their workplace. And that's kind of where, and of course that ends up happening a little later.
Yeah.
But I wanted the supernatural, I wanted Knox to be the one that was saved in the beginning. And they save each other throughout the book. One of them is not always the damsel in distress. Ellery saves Knox once, and then they get saved by another character, and then Knox saves Ellery twice, and then so it goes back and forth.
They have
Um,
shared ownership of the white charger.
they what?
They have shared ownership of the white charger.
Oh, okay.
So, the white horse, Ellery has
Right.
it, Knox has it, Charlie has it,
Yes.
which is,
So
but that's a good thing. So you had multiple ideas. Was it harder writing a magical realism than writing the high fantasy?
well, I wouldn't call this magical realism. This is contemporary fantasy, maybe even a little urban fantasy, but
Yeah.
more contemporary. Um, I've written both. I've actually written my first two with Simon and Schuster, and Deeper Waters, and so this and Deeper Waters is a fairy tale. So this is
Yeah.
Ever After is a fantasy rom com. Um, and then I switched to Spellbound and Otherworldly, which are both contemporary fantasies. And I've written another contemporary fantasy. And then I want to move back in the next book that I'm drafting. I want to move back to that kind of more high fantasy space. Um, so I like both. I don't think either one is more difficult than the other. It's just a different thought process for both.
Do you have, so you, are you a fly by the seat of your pants or
No,
planner?
I have to plot. All props to people who are pantsers because that is not the way my brain works. Um, I have to plot pretty specifically, and because or else I'll get in the middle or the muddle, as some people call it, and don't know what the heck to do or what I've set up or anything like that. So I really do have to plot things to be able to um, get through the writing. I have to know what comes next because I'm not a person that can go, oh, I've set all this up, maybe I should. No, I actually need, like, I use note cards and post-it notes, and I've got the huge post-it notes that are like this size right now. I have 4 of them taped up in my workspace, and I have
Wow.
put post-it notes and cards. What are they called? The little card, I can't remember their name.
Prompt cards,
um
aren't they?
huh
Are they prompt cards?
No, they're like just blank note cards, things. And so I have post-its and blank note cards like placed in different places on these really huge post-it notes. And it's just to keep all of my ideas in a place that I can look at them pretty easily while I'm writing, but also that I can move around easily. And I know a lot of people love to use like Scrivener or use like different things on their computer to do all that for them. And I'm just not. I would rather have it in a physical form. Yes, I'd rather have it in a physical form, and be able to physically move it or write things down. Even though my handwriting's atrocious,
Yeah, so is mine.
just to have it because it's easier for me, for my brain.
Yeah, I get that
Other
completely.
people,
I'm fascinated by people who can just sit there and go, here's my plot, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's done. And I'm thinking, are you joking?
I admire those folks. I really do, because
I
I've
have
tried it
notes
and
for
I
everything.
can't do it.
I have notes for everything. I write articles for a part of my job. I mostly handle social media and everything for a housing company, and I have notes outlined. I've got 3 notepads currently. One of them's on this desk, and the other 2 are on my work desk in this room, and they are covered in notes that nobody else can make head nor tail of. But if I don't have them, I feel lost. Everything
Yeah,
has to be planned out.
I love a Post-it note, I gotta tell you, and I love those sticky notes that are like longer that you can write and then tear and put places. And this is not funny, but I was in Virginia recently, helping my siblings were cleaning out my mom's house because she passed last year, and we were doing the state stuff. And
I'm
I
sorry.
found 2 unopened sets of Post-it notes with the long Post-its and then the little Post-its and stuff. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm taking these. I'm claiming these. These are mine. Thanks.
This is what I want to take home with me. Thank you very much. I have
Exactly.
I've recently fallen in love with the transparent ones.
Oh, those are good too.
They're fantastic. I actually was making notes for something and purposely used them just because I could.
I've seen people use those to do like notations in books,
Yeah, same
because
here.
they can write on them and put them in, and it doesn't block the text. And so I've seen people like, I have a, this isn't a clear one. I can't show you guys, but I have a Post-it right here on my laptop right now for, because I'm in edits for another book, of things that I wanted to remember that I fixed. Um, and so yeah, it's sitting right here.
But that's I think everybody has their individual style, and it sounds like you are very much a planner.
Oh
Very
yes.
much. I don't know why, but I'm kind of imagining the murder boards with the cotton threads that are
Oh
linking
yeah,
notes.
with the red threads and that
Yes,
that meme of like, I got it, and
yes,
it's all the red threads.
exactly. But I think that is sometimes that is the way everybody, well, not everybody's brain, but that is the way that a lot of planners' brains work. They need those notes and everything else. So you've mentioned that you've got another novel. How far ahead do you work, or do you work on multiple projects at the same time, or is it I'm working on this one and that's it?
So when I start a project, I'm one of those folks that I really need to be in just that project. I'm not someone that can write more than one. And again, it's just the way my brain works, is that if I'm in a specific world or writing something, then I need to have my attention on that and be, focused on that to be able to write. Some folks can write a book in a month, and that's just not me. It takes me several months to write one. So but being able to just be in that space and writing that is what I prefer. Doesn't always work out like that, just because of publishing schedules and things. So right now I have a book coming out, a book in edits, and a book I'm drafting. I have another book that is mostly written, that I need to go back and do edits and stuff on, but that's kind of on the back burner. Um, so yeah, that's and the book
Okay.
that I'm in edits will be 2025. The book I'm drafting will be 2026.
That's quite a few books in progress, though.
Yeah.
You ever get lost?
It is. It's a lot going on. That's why there's a lot of Post-its.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, it's a never-ending supply of post-it notes, which is what everybody needs. I'd love
Yes.
it if certain stores would put those on repeat purchase instead of my cat food.
So, just, any of my siblings or anybody who wants to buy me a gift or something like that for a holiday, Post-its, please.
You're going to get a
And
load of people
pens.
sending you post-its.
Pens, I love a good pen too.
I'm here.
Um, I sound so old.
Well, you
I
say
love
that.
me
I
some
mean,
Post-its and pens.
I struggle with finding pens that don't smudge. I'm left-handed. So
Mm.
trying to find a decent pen that doesn't smudge and looks good and doesn't leave marks all along my fingers is absolute gold dust. So yeah, got a nice supply of zebras. Very nice supply of zebras.
Yeah, I have some problems with my right hand, which is my dominant hand, and so finding like a pen that won't smear is good, and then also finding a pen that because I pause a lot because I have to, and then they leak, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
uh, and now
That's,
it's really unreadable.
yeah, that's exactly why I bought these. They're gel pens and they do not leak. And I do the same thing. I'll be writing something and I'll go, it's normally on a T or an M that I'm pausing. And it's, you'd sort of notice there's a tiny little thicker dot, but there's no massive, great big blot, which is great. I am so particular. I've actually been known before now to write something out, make a mark on it, make a tiny mistake. I don't want to cross it out. So I'll write the entire page over again.
I mean, I get you.
It sounds so neurotic. It really does. Really neurotic. Yeah, I haven't got a problem with neatness or anything else.
It
Can't
sounds like
tell what.
we have the same kind of wavelength.
Yeah, it's
Um,
one of those things I've never been able to get out of the habit of doing. I will legitimately rewrite an entire page, and I used to type on a manual typewriter. And if I
oh
made a single
wow.
mistake, it wasn't tip X, it was rewrite the entire page again.
Wow.
But then
Now,
I
I don't
I learnt to type before computers existed.
so I'm yeah, I no, we had computer labs when I was a kid, but I will say that I have I call it my clicky clacky keyboard. I have a external keyboard that I plug into my laptop that is the kind that is like a typewriter. And it's just because I have problems in my hands and I have to have that kind of feedback of that I've pressed it. Um,
Yeah.
and so the I love my keyboard and so now like my my laptop I used to kind of drag everywhere with me and now it's like I drag my laptop and my laptop stand and my clicky clacky keyboard and
I get that. I'm
the whole
looking right
setup.
now. I've got three keyboards in here. One is one that is styled exactly like an old style typewriter. The other one is it's almost like an old, very old PC compute keyboard that is
Nice.
quite raised and very, very clicky clacky. Absolutely love that noise. And the other one is an Apple keyboard that is just easy to transport because it's thinner. But the one that I absolutely love is one that makes so much noise. I couldn't take it into the office with me because it would disrupt everybody.
Well, I love mine and there's been times where my spouse is like, I'm trying to sleep. I'm like, tough crap. I'm writing.
I'm writing. I get that. Everybody has their comforts as well. That and the keyboard is one of mine. I bought it a couple of weeks ago because I needed one with a number pad on it.
hmm
So I had to invest in a slightly different keyboard. And yeah, I absolutely love the sound it makes. It's that nice, loud, definite click. And it's
hmm
comforting
It
and
is.
reassuring.
It is. I enjoy mine
Absolutely.
a lot.
You've mentioned already about your going back to the book instead of
I know,
typewriter, instead
little
of
tangent
keyboard.
about Post-its and pens and keyboards.
Yeah. People are going, I'm here to listen to people talk about a book. You
It's part of
can
my process.
Yeah, exactly, and it's an important part of the process. That's the thing. It is everybody has their habits and their methods of writing. You mentioned earlier that you had a lot of inspiration from mythology and folklore.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that I noted in the book was not to give any huge spoilers, but there is a moment at the very end of the book that is very Orpheus and Eurydice with
Yes.
crossing the sticks. Was that actually intentionally Orpheus and Eurydice?
Yes.
Oh,
Um,
I'm glad I got that and thought, "That is definitely that, right?"
yes. So there, again, this book is kind of I mentioned that I wanted to write this certain dynamic, and I wanted to
Yeah,
write this kind of scene that I had in my head from before, and I knew I wanted to write a kind of a retelling of that myth, but I didn't want to write just a whole retelling of that myth.
yeah,
So it gets a little bit inserted in here. So does a lot of like I said, I've wanted to. kind of lean into horror a little bit, and so there's a lot of kind of horror background and horror tropes that kind of pop up in here. Um, so, and I wanted to write a paranormal romance, so it's a
There's a
lot
lot
of
in here.
different. Yeah, it's just a lot of different things that I haven't gotten a chance to write yet, and I was like, it fits. I mean, like the Orpheus and Eurydice actually fits really well.
It really,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. It's very appropriate in the situation that, obviously, at the place that it happens in the book, it is
right.
so appropriate because of the relationship that Knox and Ellery has developed.
Yes, and actually the third part of this book was the hardest because I had done the first two thirds and had gotten to the last third of the book and wrote it and was like, I've lost the tension here. This is, it wasn't right. And I sent it to my editor and got an email back that was like, here's some of my notes, and the last third, and I was like, thank you, because I can't figure it out. And we had a whole
Validation.
discussion, and I rewrote the whole last third.
Wow.
Um,
It
and
flows so well. There is
oh, good.
some books, there is that third act twist, and it's like, could see this coming a mile off, and it doesn't quite gel with the rest of the book. This was just, I think I read it in lunchtime. I started at lunchtime one day at work because I only go in once a week. I started lunchtime at work on the Tuesday and I finished it the Wednesday night because I
Well,
just couldn't stop reading it, and I read it until quite late because it just drew me in and I really wanted to find out what happened.
I love when readers are like, I sat down and I read it all in one day, or I read it in 2 days, I read it in 8 hours, and I was like, and I always, it's such a great feeling, like, oh, you were so enraptured with the book and the characters and the narrative and all that you couldn't put it down. But also in the back of my head, I'm like, this was a year of my life. You read it in eight
I know.
hours.
Sometimes I sit there and when I've read a book very, very quickly, I'm like, should I have taken a lot longer over this? Because I know how long an author takes. I used to work in editorial work for scientific publishing, and I've done so many different things, but I was speaking with authors who'd written papers that had taken years and decades of research in pharmacological studies and everything else. And I'd be editing it and reading it in a couple of hours and sending it back to them with comment, and it's like, do I feel guilty that this has taken them a decade? Kind of, but my enjoyment of it, I can't stop reading something and slow down if I'm enjoying it.
So I'm incredibly grateful. I hope this doesn't come off as ungrateful. I am incredibly grateful to all my readers and to people who read my things and then tell me that they can't put it down, or that they read it and so quickly, or something like that, because that's a really high compliment, that someone had taken their time and maybe like neglected a few things to be able to continue reading the book. And I love that. But yeah, there's also this little thing in my back of my head that's like, a year of your life.
Yeah, I totally understand that, because it's that whole thing with when you record an episode of the podcast, for example, it takes like 6 hours to write the script, and then 2 hours of recording, a couple of hours of editing, and someone listens to it on 2 times speed.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who does that and says, "Oh, I listened to it on 2 times speed," and it's like, okay, this wasn't nearly a week of my life. Okay. But everybody lists, I think everyone consumes things in a different way, and as long as they enjoy them and they feed back to you that they've enjoyed it,
Oh yeah.
it doesn't take away the amount of time that you spent on it. But these characters, if they're that consuming and that real, you want to desperately find out what happens next. And you could quite easily say, oh, it took me 6 months to read that book because I kept on putting it down. But then what does that say about the story that was within the book? Which is, it's that balance, which is kind of difficult to, I think, well, I think the reviews say everything. And if they're positive and glowing, which they should be for this. It was a wonderful book. It is a wonderful
Thank
book, and
you.
I really enjoyed it. And as it's not my typical genre, I'm not the intended audience. I'm I'm a woman of 50. So it is, I'm not the typical audience, but at the same time, the fact that I can find relatable elements in the story and the characters, it spoke to me of certain things that I could sit there and go, yeah, I remember having a job I hated. I remember feeling like I wanted to tell my boss to go away and leave me alone. And yeah, there are certain people I'd like to hit with an iron pipe. Hey, it's being honest. I think that that's the most honest thing. It's being honest. There were also, with the story, there was a lot of environmental things with the science of Ellery's concern regarding the climate and everything that was happening in her town. It was that element of this is what we've got to look forward to, because obviously not the year just gone, but the year before, there was a very, very harsh winter that hit the front page of every single newspaper. And that for some reason really hit me when I read this book, with the harsh winter that they've been experiencing for so long.
Yeah, one of the professional reviews, and I can't remember if it was from Kirkus or it was from one of the other reviewers. They said it's like thinly veiled climate anxiety. I was like, you're not wrong.
I haven't read the reviews, so I was just judging on my own interpretation. I've actually got the notes sitting here because I make a lot
Yeah,
of notes. But it,
yeah,
it did it did sort of speak of a little bit of Ellery's perhaps anxiety, obviously your own coming through as the writer.
well, I mean, we can't. I just kind of feel like we're at a point where we can't deny that there's things that are happening that like record high temperatures, record storms, just weird climate patterns, kind of thing, and that's gonna affect. Especially the age of the
The
characters in this
characters.
book, that's going to affect the readers, my target audience of teens and YA readers. That's going to affect them in the coming generation or the coming decades more than it will probably affect me. I mean, it will a little bit, but then I'm gonna leave.
Yeah.
So
It's like, it's
sorry,
not,
I'm a
yeah.
little morbid. But there is gonna I mean they're gonna be more affected by it than I am. But it's coming. And I don't think that a lot of people at this point can deny that. So yeah,
I'll
there's a
try.
little bit of my anxiety in there.
But the thing is, I mean, it's not unreasonable, and it's not subtly veiled, it's very cleverly disguised under, and there is an explanation that is supernatural in this case. So it's not pointing fingers and going, it's their fault, which is a
Right.
great
Well,
thing.
there's a point where Ellery's boss, says like feels like we've been forgotten, the news cycle has moved on. And I feel like that happens a lot with things that we see that are, like in the news. There was a hurricane here, earthquake here, record temperatures, blizzards, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and not even just climate, just other things that occur, and we are all kind of glued to it for 24, 48, 72 hours, and then the rest of the world moves on and that community is still affected.
Yeah.
And there's not much commentary about that, but just a reminder that things happen to these communities, and even though the news cycle has moved on, everybody else has forgotten, it's still affecting these folks, and it's going to affect them for the next generation. So yeah, there's a little bit of that in Otherworldly.
We were talking mythology, I believe.
We were talking climate crisis, but we can
Oh
move
yes,
on.
of course we were. We were talking climate crisis. I recently read a book it's here actually, No Season But the Summer, which was a kind of retelling almost of the Persephone Demeter story
Hmm.
with a tie into climate and the environment, and how as a race we were destroying not only the climate but also the earth, which was a very interesting tale because it started with the main character Persephone coming back to Earth and discovering that everything had changed because it hadn't been a few years, it had a few months, it had been a few hundred years, and everything had evolved. It was fascinating and
Oh, that
horrifying
sounds
at the same time.
that sounds really cool. I yeah, in Otherworldly, the gods and goddesses talk about how time doesn't really have meaning to them, and how they were like, oh, 5 years.
Yeah,
Not a big deal. And Knox, who has been in the human realm, is like 5 years is a big deal to a human, and how it's affecting their lives, and specifically Ellery's life, which we kind of talked about how this event has been their whole teenage life.
yeah.
Um,
And
so
not only
it
that, it had a massive and very dramatic impact on how their life it actually was, because
right,
going from the home on the farm
right.
to moving to the town and having to become an adult so much younger than anybody wants to or anybody expects to have to be at any point in life.
And moving from the rural community they grew up in that is dying, to seek help in the city, to find the city also dying, which kind of leads to that hopeless feeling that they have.
And it's also the realization, I think, that we don't tend to consider. I mean, I live in a not a rural, well, it's kind of rural. On one side I have the sea, on the other side I have the South Downs National Park, but it is quite a crowded community. There are nearly 100,000 people living here, and it is quite heavy population. But thinking about how different things would be and how much we would be affected if there wasn't so much of a rural community, if we didn't have all the fields producing the natural produce, the tomatoes, the mushrooms, and everything else. We even have a vineyard on the downs. We didn't have all of that. How much would we be affected by it within the more urban environment? It's kind of
There,
scary.
the area that is in the book is based on. Well, you can find a lot of different areas in the North America,
Yeah,
where you go and there's a big city, and then you go 20 to 30 minutes outside the city, and you find small towns, rural areas, those kinds of things. And it's here too in Asheville. If you go outside of Asheville, you go into these rural counties, and in the mountains. But it's kind of indicative of a lot of the kind of big city metropolis areas that you have this city, but if you drive an hour out, you're going to be in a field of corn. So the again, going back to my friend DL, they
yeah,
live in the Ohio area, and we were talking about where I could set this that felt that everyone could recognize as something that they would see maybe in their own area, in their own state that they live in, and but it be like kind of midwestern. And so it's Ohio. um because another thing is like wanting to do the crossroads in the corn, and having the cornfield. So um that's it's basically kind of Ohio. However, I've had readers say to me, is this the Pacific Northwest? And someone else, is this the South? And it's like, okay, I did my job.
it can be anywhere that has this particular lifestyle,
Right,
which is not a bad thing, because then readers can place themselves in the position of
exactly.
Ellery or Knox or Charlie or Kada or anyone else in the book
Hmm.
that appeals, well, not even appeals to them, but they can identify with.
Right.
And I think that's what's great about if you can sit there and go, I recognize this place without actually knowing where it is. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was, very happy with the feedback that I've gotten about the setting and people not being, is this my town? Is this my town? Kind of thing. And me being like, oh, good, that it resonated the way that I've written it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's basically Ohio.
You heard it here first. It's Ohio. I have never been to Ohio. I've been to a
I've
few
been
places
through
in the
it. I've never been to it.
States. This is my drive-through tour. I saw a
Yeah.
field.
Yes. I yeah, I have family in different places and drive through Ohio quite a bit.
Are you going to go and visit Ohio now? That's where you've based the book?
Well, again, my friend DL lives there, so I might go visit them. And they actually, if you go to my Instagram, you can see a picture of them holding Otherworldly in front of the statues of corn, because the corn statues are a real place.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, um, and they call it's a art installation. It's like the field of corn or something like that, but people refer to it as Cornhenge. And so my friend DL took the book and took a picture of it in the with the corn statues.
That's
It is on
incredible.
my Instagram. And when they sent me that, I was like, oh my god, that's amazing.
It's nice when you see the real inspiration for things that you've created as well, I think. Which it's always lovely. I think it's always lovely seeing things come to fruition. So a finished book or a sculpture that is inspired. Though in a field of corn, I don't know if I'd be going in there. I have a terror. I'm absolutely terrified of horror films and things like that. I don't know. I don't know why. I didn't used to be. In the 80s, they weren't as scary. Uh, that's my
They have
argument.
gotten scary. I
They
want
have.
to just a caveat about the field of corn. The tourism and the shrine and all that kind of stuff in my book. I mean, that's not related, to that. It was just the statues were the inspiration for the tourist. I warned you.
You did indeed. Very, very enthused. Ah, it's funny though.
I
It is.
think there's someone on my porch. Um, So I have two Maltese Pomeranians. They're called Maltipoms, and they're elderly gentlemen. And then I have a younger red bone coonhound, and that I got from a shelter that they told me was a lab, and then I took to the vet, and they were like, "This is not a
Oh, a
lab."
shelter lied.
And
That's a surprise.
I think the shelter had 9 puppies that needed to be adopted, and said lab mixes. And then I took it to the vet, and they're like, maybe mixed with a lab, but this is a hound dog. And I was like, great. So that's what you hear in the background is my hound dog Zuko.
Named for Danny.
No, named for Avatar: The Last Airbender, Prince Zuko. I said his name, and he's looking at me. Hi, buddy. And then my two little dogs are Loki and Thor.
Yeah, my sister's one of my sister's cats is called Thor, and one of my mum's cats was called Loki because I named them.
I have my multi-poms are Loki and Thor, and then I have my hound dog Zuko, who you all just heard, and then I have my cat Poe, my cat Sherlock, and my cat Gizmo.
Gizmo, Gremlins. My cat's
Yes,
Darcy.
yeah, my little Gizmo, who is very vocal, um, and is the youngest of the three. But anyway, I don't even remember what we were talking about.
We were
Zuko
talking. We
started
were
howling.
talking. We were talking about. Um,
Oh, yeah. So the
yes,
stuff in
Ohio.
yeah, the stuff in the book is not that kind of that tourist attraction is inspired by Cornhenge, but it's the details are completely different. So just caveat that. And then you asked before you asked a question, and I can't remember what it was. Sorry.
That's okay. I do have another one. You write
Okay.
you've talked about your friend and fellow writer DL. Are you a keen reader as well? Do you beta DL stuff, or do you read a lot of books when you're on your downtime?
Oh, well, I well, I try to read as much as possible. But as an author, I'm either always writing or editing or those types of things. And then I will read books, for friends or read for blurbs kind of thing. And so I'm always reading, but I may not always be reading something that's published yet. Or reading something that I can't talk about, it's yeah, reading for pleasure is something that I'm trying to start to do again. I'm in a book club and an online one, and trying to read the books that other people vote in, to kind of push myself to reading for pleasure instead of reading for work. Um, and I want to I'm really trying also hard to read out of the YA space a little bit and read more into adult spaces, adult fantasy, adult stuff, like I did as when I was a kid. Um, and even I love YA books, and that's majority of what I read. The majority of what I read. But I want to, one of the pieces of advice I give to people is to read widely, read outside your genre, read, outside of your target audience, kind of thing. And I've not been able to do that.
So, what did you read outside of your genre before you became a very, very busy writer?
I used to read when I was younger. I read, well, my favorite book is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, I love that. I've actually got that right there on my shelf.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite books as a teenager, and I've read all of them, and I've reread all of them, and I've read a lot of Robert Jordan, Robert Aspirin, Tolkien, uh, Mercedes Lackey, um, Ursula K. Le Guin. Um, I read a lot of those works. Read a lot of Shakespeare. Um, Read a lot of myths. Um,
Yeah.
Throughout world myths, throughout the world, and that's all been fun reading. But I don't get a chance to do that if I'm, researching and editing and writing.
But it sounds like, I mean, a lot of those things, obviously, the Shakespeare and the world myths and folklore and everything have had a great influence on what you write yourself. So
Yeah,
it's not as though, it's as you said, reading outside of your genre has given you the inspiration and the not the plot line, because you haven't gone, oh right, I'm taking this plot, but you've taken the characters and certain events and used them, or taken them and made them your own.
yeah, and you can find inspiration anywhere. And one of the things that I think people forget about just the practice of writing is the daydreaming part of it. And when before the pandemic, I was in a job where I drove all the time, and I drove everywhere. And that driving time was my thought time, where I could think about things and think out plots, and was also kind of my inspiration time. One of the inspiration for Spellbound came from driving from Atlanta to back to Asheville, and driving on some back roads and thinking about, and on the phone with my brother and talking through some world building stuff. So the idea for This Is Ever After came from a conversation I had with Julian Winters at a convention. We were there and we were discussing some stuff, and the idea for a rom com in a fantasy world, kind of a rom com in a castle, came up. And then drove home the 3 hours, and during that 3 hours was thinking through character creation and how I would write that. And so when the pandemic started and I didn't have that drive time anymore, my writing just stalled. Um,
Oh.
And it was really difficult because I wasn't getting that time to think through things. I wasn't getting that inspiration of, why is there a pole on the side of the mountain, that kind of stuff. And being able to have that kind of thought process, that daydreaming time. So my writing was really difficult for me during those stages where I had to seek inspiration elsewhere. And so, yeah, I say inspiration can really come from anywhere. And there's a lot of things that um, pop up in different, media that, are kind of, I don't want to get all psychology on y'all, but like the collective unconscious, like different tropes or things that are kind of just there. And you'll see in a Looney Tunes episode, but then you'll see it again somewhere else, and you'll see it again somewhere else, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that so like I'll write something and someone will be like, that author had to have watched Hadestown. And I'm like, I've never watched Hadestown. Or that author has watched Supernatural. I've seen one episode of Supernatural. So I think it's hilarious when stuff like that happens because, obviously inspired by such and such. Well, not really, but I was inspired by something that inspired someone else to do this, kind of thing.
Yeah. Isn't that what they say, though? There are a limited number of stories, but an unlimited number of ways to tell them.
Exactly.
Because they said the same about Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe and everything else, which is why there are all those theories about who really was Shakespeare. And so many other authors. There have been, you'll read one book, all of the mythology retellings that are coming out at the moment. I've got 2 on my shelf that came out the same year about Clytemnestra.
Nice.
2 that literally came out within months of each other. And Medusa and all of the other characters. There are so many retellings coming out.
Well, Otherworldly has a lot of like Faustian themes and Faustian bargains and things like that. And as I was writing it, there were 2 books that came out. The Wicked Bargain, and I can't remember the name of the other book, but they were both in the YA space, and they were both deals with the devil or deals with Diablo. Kind of Faustian themes. And I was like, oh no. But then, I had already written it. So
and not only that, it's probably very, very different from the other 2 books because your the bargain and the way that it's done is incredibly it's not a bargain with the devil per se. And I actually like Goethe's version of Faust.
Which I did not read. Because someone asked me that. Did you read that version? I was like, no. I researched that version, but I didn't actually read it.
Interesting version. I preferred it in it's going to sound so pretentious now. I preferred it in German than I did in English.
Well, I applaud
As I said, it sounds really pretentious.
I read the Christopher Marlowe version.
Christopher Marlowe was a fantastic playwright.
Yes, and I love that. That was Dr. Faustus was the only one of his that I read, and I read it a long time ago, while I was studying Shakespeare, and really liked it, and actually wrote a paper about how you see Faustian themes, like in a lot of different media,
Absolutely.
and wrote a whole like paper of modern Faust kind of things in cartoons was my direct thing. Anyway, Dr. Sawyer, Professor Sawyer, this is your fault.
Yeah, is it his fault or to credit? It could be credit.
Whichever.
It's not a bad thing. And that, I think that's it though, isn't it? It's one of those there you can always credit someone with the inspiration for something, but the actual you carried that out and created all these characters from that piece of inspiration. And the story that is told about them is different. It may be a Faustian bargain to a degree, but it's everything else that kind of comes off that like a tree. All of the different branches of the story and the characters that are within it.
Yeah, and like you said, the the Faustian stuff that are in those other two books that came out, as after I had finished this and was in edits with it and everything, they're totally different than what's here. And retellings, I love retellings, and making things relatable to our time period or to a particular audience, like I'm writing to teens, and making those things, and kind of refurbishing them and refreshing them, for folks. I think that's I think that all of those books are great.
It seems to be a very, very common theme. I'm looking at one of my shelves right now, and I think that the majority of the books on that are retellings or revisions of fairy tales. But that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. I
And
mean, In Deeper
then
Waters is it's The Little Mermaid.
nothing wrong with that. That's
you
one of
know
my favorite Disney movies.
it is, it's more the original story, but
The
uh
original story, that's the thing I think that people forget about fairy tales is that the original stories were actually quite dark.
yes, they were very dark. So yeah, I mean, we didn't market In Deeper Waters as a retelling, because there's so much to it that's not retelling kind of thing, but there's you know it has a lot of The Little Mermaid in it. So kind of like, pieces of things show up in Otherworldly.
Yeah, inspiration,
Yep.
which is, but this one is Otherworldly has inspiration from so many sources and they work together. And sometimes you'll read something or watch something, and these multiple sources they jar with each other. They don't quite go, they clash. And this one,
Right.
they all fall into place. They have their purpose, and it's like it's not a throwaway comment because it comes back at a later point.
Yes, and that was again a lot of planning.
This is going back to the murder board.
A lot of post-it notes made that possible. But that was the intention all the time, was to have these characters, Ellery and Knox, meet other characters, and have a purpose in that scene, but will have a purpose later on too. And that was, yes, the murder board planning.
I liked the fact that certain little details would come back in, like the vampire and everything else. All of the well, not really a vampire so much as an emotional vampire, and the tie-in that had to Knox and his origins and his goddess and the entryway to her world. It was so carefully done, and you could tell it was really well crafted because of the fact that you weren't going, well, why is that person there? Please don't jump up on the table.
Yeah, as much as I hate that character, Hale, and as much as I had a hard time writing that scene, um, and I knew it was a scene that was going to be written, and I was excited when I got to it because it was a turning point in the narrative, and was a scene I knew that was happening, way before, and finally
Yeah.
had gotten to that scene. Oh yeah, I get to write this scene, and then started writing it, and I was like, oh, I don't like this. So
But there
I
has
did
to
my
be,
best to make it. Um, I did my best to make it. I don't know how to say this. Um, it's a creepy scene.
I get that's the thing, you got that feeling that it was supposed to be an uncomfortable moment. It
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to be this moment that was, oh, well, that's lovely. It was supposed to be, oh my God, I want to hit him.
Yes, it's an uncomfortable moment, and unfortunately, it's an uncomfortable moment that happens to people all the time,
Hmm.
in a not supernatural way,
Yeah,
and
it's
which is
real.
why when they show up at the party, Charlie and Zeta are like, "Don't take any candy from anyone. Don't accept a drink that you haven't opened yourself." We're going to meet back up here in an hour. And took all these kind of human safety precautions that you should take when you go to a party like that.
Or a
But
nightclub
then
or
didn't
anything else.
consider the supernatural part of it. So yeah, creepy scene. Not my favorite.
But the fact that that element, it came across as creepy because it was intended to be that way. It
Right.
wasn't supposed to be this moment of romance and, "Oh, wonderful." It was supposed to be that horrible, that horrifying, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening" moment.
Yeah, it was a moment.
And you're just gonna leave it at that, aren't you? It was a moment,
Yeah,
it happened.
yeah.
Let's move on.
Look, I was that was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever written. And I was more comfortable writing the scene in the abandoned mall
That was
with
creepy too.
the creature that was like came from the Nun movies. Than with that scene.
I get that though, because the creature that came from the non-movies in the mall is not as likely to happen as the
Right,
situation in the club. I
right,
mean,
in the
that
party.
was yeah, that was going to be, that is something that sadly happens, whereas the other occasion wasn't ever going, it's not likely to happen
Right.
unless there are really things on heaven and earth that we do not understand. Um, I'm hoping not.
You're not likely to encounter a phantom um in an abandoned mall, but you are likely to be in touch with someone that's creepy at a party.
Oh,
Um
absolutely. I think most people have encountered someone that they've gone, I'm walking over the other side of the room, thank you very
mhm,
much. I know that I
exactly.
certainly have. Any club
Especially
in the 90s.
yeah, especially young folks at parties like that. So
Yeah, we
um
didn't so much have those, we had nightclubs. I mean, we still do have nightclubs, but nightclubs in the 90s were full of creeps. No offense to the
you
people that
know,
weren't, but
it's funny, the college town that I was in for my first round of college did not have bars and did not have clubs, and even they had some frats, but we had and people who know are gonna know, we had delis, and you went to the deli, and that's where you went to get your food and your beer, and there was two delis and a tavern, and that's where you went. And
oh, wow.
anyone who went to that school is going to be like, "Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about."
I think we have one deli in my local area, and it's about 25 miles away.
Yeah, that's
We
where we
have a
walked
lot.
to.
That sounds quite pure.
Oh no, but
It's where it's misleading.
yeah, it was. But that's where you. That's the college town I was in. Was the two delis in the tavern. So
Which is interesting. That's a
I
very, very
know
different
it's
take on it.
yes.
Well, I'm realizing that we have been talking for absolutely ages, and I've just got to thank you again for your time. Um, is I know that the book comes out in 2 weeks as we're talking now, and this episode is going to be released on the 1st of April. So, where can people pre-order? Are there any pretty special editions? I have a collection. I love them. I really do love special editions. And are you going to be doing a promo tour or anything?
So people can find me on Instagram. I'm really on Instagram only, and I post pretty things there. And for pre-orders, I am doing a pre-order thing with Malaprop's bookstore in Asheville. And the link is in my bio on my Instagram, but you can pre-order and I will sign it. You have to pre-order before release date. And then when I do my launch at the store, I will personalize and sign and they will send them out to you. So
Oh,
you can
wow.
do signed pre-orders through Malaprop's bookstore in Asheville, North Carolina. Um, that's my launch event. And then I am doing a the Greater Charlotte Book Crawl in Kannapolis, North Carolina, that following weekend. And then in May, I'll be at the Decatur Children's Book Festival. So those are really the only. And then, of course, in the September, I'll be in Atlanta at Dragon Con. I'm always there, though. Um, um, and special editions. There are two. Okay, so there's this beautiful edition right
Yeah.
here. Dazzling Bookshop has done a special edition with a different cover and sprayed edges. And then Illumicrate announced their special editions
Oh, wow.
of all four of the books together. So In Deeper Waters, so this is Ever After, Spellbound, and Otherworldly all together, signed, which I have to tell you was a feat.
I can only imagine.
I had boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes, and it was
Was it the physical books or just a page?
it was a page, but it was pages and pages and pages. And it took me from now, of course, I'm slow and I do have problems with my hands. So, but it took me from the end of October until my birthday, January 16th, to get all of them signed.
Wow. That's
Well,
a long time.
yes, but again, there was holidays in there, and I'm a little slower just because of the like I've mentioned the problems I have with my hands. So, um, and I did it like while watching Christmas movies and while rewatched Community all the way through. um, but yeah, so the Illumicrate editions are signed. I haven't gotten to tell that story yet because it just got announced. So yeah, there's Illumicrate editions and there's Dazzling Bookshop, and that's it.
That's a lot, and Illumicrate does produce, from what I've seen, absolutely stunning special editions.
I got an email that mine should show up here on Monday,
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm excited to see them. I've seen the end papers and they're freaking gorgeous, and then they're signed, so I'll get some of my signatures back.
But not only that, the hard covers, the loose
Right?
covers, everything about those, and the sprayed edges.
Yeah.
Sprayed edges, I have a thing for. They have to be, well, not they have to be. They are always very, very pretty, and they make a book so personal as well. That's what I love about them.
Yes, and Dazzling Bookshop, they did new cover art, I think, and sprayed edges, and then Illumicrate did the end papers, and I think they did sprayed edges too. Um, yeah, so those are the special editions, and all four of the books are available in both.
Oh,
So
wow. That's
yes,
fantastic. And obviously they've only just announced it, so that's going to
yeah,
be
they announced it. I don't remember, but they just announced it to where I can talk about it.
well, that is fantastic. I'm looking forward
Look,
to
I've been sitting on that for a long time.
well, at least since October.
Yes, before that, when they were like, "We're gonna send a bunch of boxes to your house," and I was like, "All right, cool." And then they showed up, and my UPS guy was like, um, "What are these?" And I
Kind of like the
explained it
scene
to him, and
from
I was like, "You're gonna be picking these back up," and he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm gonna call in sick that day."
is it kind of like the scene from the Santa Claus where he gets all the naughty and nice list delivered?
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of like that, honestly.
That's one of my favorite scenes from that film. I imagine getting a delivery like that one day with loads of books in it. New books
You
that
know
I
what?
can
I have
put
a
on
picture
myself.
of it, and I might, now that I can talk about it, I might post it on Instagram just to show everybody the boxes and how they were arranged in my house. As I was saying, because I was taking pictures the whole time. I was like, "This is
I
hilarious."
bet.
Um,
That's not an experience that many people can say they've had.
yeah, it was pretty fun. I mean, for the most part, except for the yeah, but yeah. So I've got some. Maybe I'll post them on Instagram and um, you know what? When I get my copies, that's what I'll do. I'll post pictures of my copies and I'll post pictures of
The journey
the
to get there.
process. Yeah.
That is fantastic though, and getting four Illumicrate special editions all in one, I'm guessing in an option of a set, is
Yeah, look,
brilliant.
I just again have to just be so completely grateful to just everyone who is supported me throughout this author journey, but all the readers, and I don't, I'm not, I don't take this lightly, like I am incredibly grateful, and I know that it's a lot of privilege to get where I am, and but it's also, writing queer stories for youth, and being able to be successful with it, is just, something that I have worked towards, and I'm just, again, like, just completely grateful. And I want folks to really know that it's I understand, that it's that I got to this point, not all on my own. And so, the special editions, and readers, and being able to do events and that kind of stuff is all stuff I've dreamed of. And again, it's just because of you know podcasters, and book bloggers, and bookstagram, and readers, and librarians, and booksellers. I mean, all of those folks have helped me get here. So
And yeah, that's it though. It's the readers who, I mean, without readers, I wouldn't be podcasting after nearly 4 years, because because there would be no point. And it's a fantastic opportunity to pick up new books and experience new authors as well, that I wouldn't have even thought about when I first started, because I was very, very set in my, this is the path of books, and I'm looking at a full shelf of Joanna Lindsay. Well, as I say that, because that's what I used to read all the time. And it's introduced me to brand new stories, brand new authors, and that's thanks to readers and listeners. And it's a privilege to get to speak with people who have seen it from the other side as well. The authors that create the books that I sit and read.
yeah, and I know that in interviews and stuff, I come off pretty flippant and humorous and laugh a lot, that kind of thing. But I'm aware of just the amount of work that folks have put in, um, to to allow me to write the stories that I want, and allow me to have a career, and being an author. So
But that's the thing, your stories are very unique. They're told from a unique perspective with characters that I don't think I've encountered before. Obviously, certain elements of the story are familiar because I read a lot, but it's told in a very, very different way, and it was a really enjoyable read.
well,
So I'm
thank
very,
you.
very thankful that I got sent the book.
Well, thank you very much. Um, Blushing.
I'm sorry. But it has been seriously an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing your hound. You did
My hound dog.
you did warn me, but it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and I wish you seriously all the best with the launch of Otherworldly, because I'm going to be recommending. I have already recommended it to people. I said it's coming out on this date, and I already know one person who is definitely going to buy it, and I'm hoping I'm going to send her a link to this while she's in hospital. So, hey, Erica.
Oh, yes. Feel better soon. Get well. You know, I think you told, what was her name?
Erica.
Erica. Please feel better soon. Um,
I'm keeping my fingers crossed because she's not had the best of luck. But thank you again ever so much. And the Otherworldly comes out on the 2nd of April. I'm getting the date right now. I'm not saying the 1st. That's April Fool's Day and Easter Monday for that matter. So April the 2nd, Otherworldly comes out, and you will be able to order your Illumicrate special editions relatively soon, I'm guessing.
yeah, I think like right after.
Yeah, so not very long to wait at all. Thank you ever so much.
Again, thanks for having me, and I've really enjoyed talking with you, and being able to go on little tangents about post-its and pens.
Absolutely. It's nice to have someone else to talk about it with. My cat's not quite so receptive.